Okay, welcome to mini lecture 6 in module 3. What I'm going to be doing in this lecture is just briefly summarizing the transformation and the stages of colonization and decolonization that occurred in the Americas and how they really link the cultures of this region together. First of all, what I want to suggest is that there was a fairly narrow period of European exploration of the Americas that was focused on movement from Spain, Portugal, England, and the Netherlands to some degree, that moved through the Americas and identified areas that were of value. In these movements, what we see is the beginnings of the connection of, again, European commerce with African slave trades into the Americas in terms of agriculture, resource extraction, and the development of plantation systems. Now, very quickly, areas were occupied and colonized by a core group of European states. What you'll notice is that in the case of North America, the eastern part was dominated by the English in the coastal regions and in the Hudson Bay area, and that the French occupied much of the St. Lawrence region through the Great Lakes into the Mississippi River Basin. In contrast, Mesoamerica, Middle America, and the western parts of North America were occupied very early on by Spain. And the Spanish dominance in the region produced a markedly different system of colonization. Small-scale holdings, certainly on the eastern part of the United States, articulated with slavery, while in Mexico and into New Spain, much of the resource extraction focused on precious metals, especially silver, and the development of large-scale animal husbandry in the form of haciendas and cattle raising. If we move into the South, the important distinction is that the eastern part of South America was associated with Portugal, and that's also the reason why today Brazil speaks Portuguese, while the western part of the continent remained part of Spain, and so the Spanish-speaking areas of Peru, Ecuador, Chile, and then up into Venezuela, Colombia, and Bolivia. These major holdings within the continents are somewhat different than the minor holdings that happen in the Antilles. The Caribbean region actually had a much broader settlement pattern with the Dutch, the French, the British, and the Spanish all occupying small islands and beginning to develop very effective plantation systems focusing on sugar production. Now, the other thing that's important to note is that throughout our period of independence, much of the same was beginning to happen throughout the Americas. You'll notice this is a map of 1780, and what you'll notice is that we begin to see that the formation of what are known as viceroyalties, that is, holdings that were under Spanish influence, holdings that were under Portuguese influence, and then British territories and the transformation of the French out of largely North America. As that occurred, as we begin to see this narrowing of colonial holdings, we also begin to see the movement towards independence. We often think of the United States as this very unique movement towards independence, but in reality, very quickly following our independence, we see Latin America fundamentally transformed into independent states. In fact, if you think about the United States fighting first the War of Independence and the War of 1812, by 1830, virtually all of the states in South and Central America, with the exception of the Caribbean, had gained their independence. And for a period of time, there was a movement towards a Gran Colombia, that is, a unification of the states in South America that never came to pass. So when we think about our history, our common history, it is one of colonization and then decolonization and independence. The transformations that occurred in between, the question of why the United States moved in one direction and then the states of Central and South America did not progress in terms of effective democracies as well, that's for another class. And if you're interested, I teach a class in Latin America and the Caribbean, and we go into that in some detail. All right, so important idea, again, quickly for your quiz. Independence moves through all of the mainland by the 1830s. Virtually all the states of the mainland gain their independence by the 1830s. If you'll notice, with the exception of Haiti, all of the microstates of the Caribbean do not gain their independence till well into the 20th century. Cuba, certainly by 1902, but the balance of them essentially remained colonies well into the 1960s, 70s, and 80s. And so that sets the Caribbean dramatically apart from the rest of the region. Okay, that's it for the decolonization period. And again, focus in your notes on who occupied which areas, what were the colonial holdings, and how they related to contemporary society. Remember, Eastern South America, Brazil is Portuguese, Western is Spanish, and then the relationship in terms of the Central American and North American regions. Okay, that's it for this one. Again, the last lecture on here will be focused on the question of immigration, and that will lead to your quick write assignment.